Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the Buster Show podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, new Cy Young Award-winning pitcher, Trevor Bauer. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. Good to be here.
And, I said it before, but I don't think you'll get tired of hearing, that you are a Cy Young Award-winning pitcher. How does it feel?
So I'm actually really bad at celebrating events like this. So I've been actively trying to celebrate them. I won the Golden Spikes, which is I guess it's like the Heisman for baseball in college. And it wasn't until like 3 years later that I saw the award in my house, and I was like, wow. I reflected and thought back, like, that's pretty cool. That's what I went to college to do, and I did it. So I'm trying not to make the same mistake this time. I'm trying to celebrate it. Sprayed some champagne with my agent. Went out to dinner with a bunch of family and friends, and trying to enjoy it. But it's something I've wanted, ever since 2011 when I won the Golden Spikes. The next goal was to win a Cy Young. So it's been a long time coming, and pretty proud of myself, to be honest.
Oh, man. That's the best. But then again, to your point, it is more about the process and the journey for it than it is about the result. But to have done it and look back on it is just the most fun ever, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the process is clearly the most important on a day-to-day basis, right? But if you don't ever get a result for your process, then it's hard to say that your process was good. Everyone can have a process, right? But if you're not going somewhere, if you don't accomplish something with the process, what good was it? So the way I do things, I look at where I am right now, and I try to be really honest with myself, and I try to get other people to be honest with me about where I am and whatever I'm trying to solve. Like, where am I right now? And then where do I want to be? And so I have the endpoints, and then you can kind of fill in the middle, and you can figure out, like, how do I get from point A to point B? So if you're trying to get to point B and you never get to point B, then it's hard to say that the process was important because you just didn't accomplish anything. So the accomplishment is important because it validates all the work that you did, and the process you built, and the time you spent and stuff like that. And so having that validation at the end, achieving the goal at the end makes the process that much more sweet.
Super real stuff right there. So, at what age did the process of becoming a professional athlete begin for you, and how did you sort of begin to realize that? Was it
It's
a natural thing, or how did that start?
Yes, there's kind of two portions of it. One, when I was in the crib, my parents put a bunch of toys in the crib, obviously, like stuffed animals and whatever you put in a baby's crib. And a couple of the toys, that we called it Fat Bat. There was a bat that was maybe about a foot long. It was red. It's still on my shelf at my parents' house. They still have it, the exact bat. But it has this big barrel. It's a wiffle ball bat for young kids. And there's a stuffed baseball, like a fabric, like, baseball looking thing. And those are the two toys that I always played with for whatever reason. They changed out a bunch of different other ones. Like, there's footballs and there's stuffed animals, whatever the case is. And I just always picked up the baseball and the bat. So really, from the time I was in a crib, and I don't remember, these are just stories that my parents kind of tell me. I don't really remember any of that. But I was always interested in baseball. And then I had a really unique situation with my family growing up, in the sense that we lived in California, but my dad worked in New Mexico. And so he would leave on Sunday night, he'd fly to work, and he'd get back Friday morning at like 3 a.m. And so during the week he was gone. So from a very young age, like, the deal that he had with me was, I'll continue to pay for baseball lessons. I'll pay for you to be on the travel team. I'll pay for you to enroll and play, whatever. I'll provide equipment and stuff like that. But you have to do the work in between the lessons, in between the practices, in between the games, so that you can continue to get better. Because I'm not just going to pay for the same lesson over and over, or the same, travel team, tournaments over and over, if you're not getting better. And that seemed fair enough to me. As a young kid, I could understand that. So I don't know exactly what age, but it must have been 6, 8, somewhere in there. I would ride my bike up to the park with my, buckets of baseballs, or I'd have my glove in my backpack or whatever, and I would go find a fence and I would throw, and I'd be doing my own process. I had to internalize my process from a young age. And that's really where the journey started, because I had to take ownership of it. And I decided from a young age, obviously, that I wanted to do that. No one was forcing me to ride my bike to go do that. I had to
Right.
force myself. And that's really where it all started for me.
That's awesome. I thought you were going to say they put a baseball in your crib and you just started throwing 95 mile an hour fastballs at age 4. But I mean,
No,
that's the process right there.
yeah.
So I want to talk about you as an entrepreneur, because that's where I think you have differentiated yourself from all MLB players and most professional athletes for that matter. Where did you sort of get a knack and find some love in the business side of things and turning yourself into a brand? Because as you know, us as fans of baseball, we know that that's not a very common thing.
Mm.
Baseball players like to be further back as opposed to, athletes in other sports. Where did you kind of get that knack?
So it started with baseball. From a young age, like I was talking about, my process is I evaluate where I am, I look at where I want to go, and then I develop a process. Well, part of developing that process is you have to see the inefficiencies in what you currently do. You have to see the things that are lacking, I guess. Um, and so I got really good from a young age. I built this ability to look and see inefficiencies in systems. So I see inefficiencies in my training. I see inefficiencies in my performance. I see inefficiencies. Then it started being, I see inefficiencies in players that I'm around and things that they could do better. Then I see inefficiencies in team structures, and I see inefficiencies in industries. And so as I learned more about these things, as I went through school, really, when I got out of school, when I got out of college, um, I started seeing inefficiencies in a bunch of different things. I saw an inefficiency in myself in like 2014, where all I did was baseball, and I would drive myself nuts. And I mentally, it was like kind of spiraling downwards. So I was like, okay, I need a hobby to go do that. And so I got really into drones, and that's all I did off the
Nice.
field is drones. Well, at some point, I figured out enough about drones at the current time that I was like, okay, I see the end here. I know everything I need to know. If I want to be really good at drones, then all I have to do is practice like infinite hours. And I just wasn't willing to practice the infinite hours because I'd figured out the intellectual puzzle. And so I'd seen inefficiencies in the baseball industry for a while because I'm in it, the industry as a whole, how players are represented, how players are marketed, stuff like that. And so I kind of knew that I wanted to get into business. One of my goals is to become a billionaire, and I know I'm not going to do that just by playing baseball. And I've always had a mind for it. So, so I knew I wanted to get into business for a couple, 2, 3 years, probably back in 2015 or 2016, but I didn't know what. I'm like, what am I going to sell? I don't know enough about it. I don't know what business I'm going to run. Well, in 2018 at the All-Star game, Rob Manfred made a comment about Mike Trout, and basically saying that MLB would like to market its stars more, but it's on the player to be marketable. It's on the player to engage. Um, and it didn't sit too well with me, emotionally at the time, because like, oh, here's the commissioner of our game attacking the players for not doing enough. It's like, we are the product on the field. We have a full-time job to go out and play
Right.
for 6 months, plus if you make playoffs at 7, plus spring training 6 weeks. So you're looking at 8.5 months out of the year where it's literally every single day. Even off days during the year, you're traveling. You're very rare you get an off day at home. And so it didn't sit well with me. And I was like, okay, I see there's a problem here. Like, baseball's losing popularity among the younger generations, and Rob Manfred doesn't think the players are engaging enough, but no one's teaching the players how to engage. No
Right.
one's then taking the players and engaging with the fans in a way that draws them in and makes that connection. I was like, okay, I can do that. And my best friend Taiki, I had met him at a training facility called Driveline that I go to, and he started as a trainee, then he was a trainer, and then he kind of handled all their video and marketing side of things for a while, just because he was passionate about video. He had recently, just like 6 months before that, left to go freelance because he wanted to get more into storytelling and develop his filmmaking career. And so we both share a passion for baseball and decided to start Momentum. And spent 6 to 8 months like trying to figure out what we were going to do and set the structure and whatever, and then launched in early, I think January 2019. And that was really the first kind of foray, and I loved it. I loved like the puzzle of it, trying to figure out, where do we go next? What's the next move? How do we organize our people? How do we stuff like that? And then so I just looked at the other inefficiencies that go along with that, and I said, oh, okay, well, if you have content, that's great, but then how do you make the content the right content? Well, that's brand building, right? So I'm going to start like a branding, educational, like management company, and so that's in the works. And then it's, well, what do you do with the once you're branded, like how do you monetize that? And it was that was the next step. And then I was like, okay, well, now you have this brand that like should be valuable to teams. How do you utilize that to like make yourself more valuable in contract negotiations? How do players get more value out of the contract negotiations? And at about that time, my agent now, Rachel Luba, had like launched her own agency and had this pitch of like, look, we're going to use social media, we're going to charge less, we're going to it's going to be more customizable, all this stuff. And I was like, wow, that makes sense.
Right.
It fits perfectly with what I'm doing. And then so that was the next thing. And then it just the snowball gets rolling, and I'm like, oh, well, we could do this and we could do that. Now I'm just so in it. I'm just like, I see all the different connections, and it's like a big chessboard,
No,
or like four chessboards where you're playing, cross board, and the whole deal. So
no, I love hearing your passion for it, and we'll dive into all of that. But I'm curious your thoughts on this because I come from more of the basketball NBA side of things, and the way that the NBA approaches their content and copyright policies is if it doesn't directly conflict with live TV viewership, it benefits the league because more
mm,
people will end up, becoming fans, buying merchandise, subscribing to the NBA's version of watching online on MLB, which is League Pass and things like that. Whereas other leagues feel as though if somebody is paying for it, why should we let you use it?
mm,
And that is what, in my opinion, crushes leagues on the social side, which then, doesn't allow younger fans to get in because there are no micro communities of pages and people
mm-hmm.
posting highlights and getting new people in. Have you found and seen similar things?
It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. The two gold standards, in my opinion, are the NBA and MMA. I think MMA nails the storytelling so well.
Yeah.
To promote a fight, you have to have a story for the fight. Why are these guys fighting? Why do they dislike each other, or do they respect each other? And it's a battle of the best of all time, or like, what did this guy go through to like make him want to be a fighter? So they have these storylines that they develop these personalities in the sport, and they like really encourage those things to shine. And of course, it's an individual sport, and a lot more of that can happen. An individual can take over his marketing and like really build his story through the media, but the organization encourages that, they promote that, they facilitate that. Same thing in the NBA, like you're talking about. I use this example all the time. Steph Curry threw a bounce pass in the NBA All-Star game, either last year or the year before. 8 minutes afterwards, it was trending on Twitter. I mean, it was a bounce pass that like led to a dunk, but like Curry was trending for throwing the bounce pass because he did it creatively. And like 8 minutes later, it's got millions of views all over Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, now what? I'm scrolling through this thing, like, now what was so special about it? I'm like, it was cool, but like there's been way cooler plays, even in the same game. But Curry had built himself into obviously this super recognizable like figure and super popular figure, and then he did something cool, and it's everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, like these highlights are everywhere. You know, Mike Trout jumps in the air and robs a home run, and like it's hard to find that. You don't see it. Tim Anderson flips a bat, and like it's hard to find places. And it's gotten better the last couple of years, but the policy is so restrictive that players, technically, if you read the policy, players are not allowed to share pictures or videos of themselves if they're in a team uniform with a team logo without getting permission first.
Which is
That's
insane.
Yeah, it's technically like, now do they enforce it? No, but it's technically in the policy. And so like theoretically, I would go and have like, let's say I did something viral during a start, like I had my Cincinnati Buds like beer chug viral moment, right? It got shared everywhere. If I wanted to post it to amplify that, I would technically have to reach out to the team, who would have to reach out to the league to get permission for me to then share a picture of it, a video of it. I just go ahead and share those things anyway, but it's technically in the policy. So like you said, it kills those micro communities. And it kills opportunities for businesses to be able to get going to create more interesting content that would promote the player, that would then promote the league. Like if we're going to have a video, like, Patreon's a thing, and like if people were going to pay us for like exclusive content, uh, we would have to pay a license for any logo that any MLB logo that appeared in that video. If people were paying us for seeing that content, um, we have to pay for that. And the fee is like $10,000 per minute of footage, whether you use 1 second or 59 seconds of it. Um, and it's so expensive that even if you're not, like, these aren't stories that the league is telling. No one's doing this. No one's, you know, off the field with a guy wearing a Cincinnati hat because he's super proud to be a Red. Like, that's not a story that the league's telling. The league isn't selling that, but you still have to pay for that. Whereas, like, obviously, if you're rebroadcasting a game, I get it. But the NBA, like you're saying, it's like, tell the stories, grow the league,
Yeah.
So
No, that's it. And I think it's really interesting too, because you look at, you mentioned Steph, he just launched the Curry brand Under Armour. There's no reason that a Mike Trout or a Trevor shouldn't have the same thing as Jordan. LeBron's going to eventually have it with Nike. There were stories about how he wanted to launch Team LeBron. That'll happen. Curry has his own brand.
mhm. Well, I think it makes sense with the large shoe companies because basketball shoes can be worn by everybody, right? Because they're flat
Right.
bottom shoes. So in baseball, the shoe companies shy away from doing that because not many people wear cleats. And the design on a cleat traditionally has not been looked like a shoe.
Right.
So there's two options here. You get creative and you build a brand around something else that's baseball culture. But if you're going to do that, you have to be able to promote baseball culture, and you have to be able
Yeah.
to promote the players. And the league's policies are restrictive enough that, like, it's stifled that for the past however many years. So we're very far behind. It stifles it from the top down, but also the culture in the clubhouse. If you're trying to promote yourself as a brand, you're looked at as selfish. You're not a team
Right.
player. You're not focusing. The other way to do it is just to make cleats look like shoes, and then sell the shoe version of the cleat. But the league's cleat policy has been restrictive enough that, like, for the longest time, and it's changed over the past 2 to 3 years, but the longest time you could only have two colors on your cleats. They had to be 50% black, and you couldn't have custom designs. You couldn't have custom wording. You couldn't have anything like that. And I think now, as the league has opened that up and allowed for some of these custom shoes, like, I mean, I wore a bunch of them last year. They were super popular. People loved them. Like, they created a ton of buzz on social media. Um, you're going to start seeing some of these opportunities where it's like, oh, okay, I had a really popular pair of cleats that I wore this year. I'm going to make those into shoes. People are, going to buy a couple of them, and it'll help start, like, the line moving. But yeah, it's just that baseball's fallen so far behind in those creative marketing ways that really draw in the young fans and attach with the young people in the culture. NBA is great with music. They have popular music playing during the game. So now you get people, and then they've identified with, like, the popular music. It's kind of a rap, pop, hip hop culture woven in seamlessly with the game. So now you have two markets.
Cool.
You have basketball fans and you have pop fans, or rap fans, music fans, and that's everybody. It
No.
widens your market, and those are young people. Those are your future fan base for the next 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. So
So it's so true. But in terms of the product, and like having a Trevor Nike or whatever it is, the way I see it is they should have a whole product line of everything in baseball culture: your hats, your gloves, your batting gloves, your cleats, your street shoes, doing what you were talking about there. There's so many more products that you need in baseball, which would, obviously sneakers are sneakers. Everybody wears sneakers. Not everybody wears batting gloves, but since there are so many different things and there are so many fans, maybe it would make sense. But
no
to your,
doubt. And the thing about those items that you mentioned is a lot of them they're pretty perishable. So you create one fan that needs batting gloves. He goes and plays for a season. He probably goes through his batting gloves in a season and needs them again next season. There's like 15. The average changes year to year, but there's on average there's like 15 million youth baseball players every single year. And then they need a new bat every. They grow. They need a new weight every 6 months to a year. They need new batting gloves. They wear out a glove. They need new shoes. They're because kids are growing, you know. So it's not like a one-time thing where you have a one-time purchase and only 15 million player audience. Like you have constantly renewing people, and they're constantly growing and needing new stuff. And there's so many different items. Basketball, you got shoes, you got a headband, and you got a ball, right?
Maybe a headband.
Right. But I agree with that. There's so many products, and there's such a wide market for it. It's been relatively untapped.
It's really interesting. So what are you most excited about now on the business front? I just want to say a few things that I really like that you did. I saw your t-shirt that said rent available
Space for
to
rent. Yeah,
space for rent. That's probably the funny. Did you make that, by the way?
I didn't. So my marketing agent, Morgan, is really really sharp on a lot of these things, and so she actually had that idea, and she brought it to me, and she's like, hey, I'd like to, well, she actually just made the shirts and she shipped them to me, and she's like, hey, I sent you a surprise, let me know when you get it. So I opened this up, I'm like, hey, can you explain these to me? She goes, yeah, so for all your YouTube videos, you know, you want people and advertisers to understand that like you're willing to wear clothes and their logo for, you know, for that. Like she had the idea when I like unbuttoned my shirt and had my Send It shirt on in Kansas City. I have a shirt that I sell on my website and a moment that happened in Kansas City. And I unbutton my shirt and I'm wearing the shirt and it gets shared everywhere because like no one's seen a picture do that before. And then, you know, sales on the site go up. Obviously, people want the shirt. So like she's very good with these ideas and like, okay, well, where are people's eyes most? And like, how can we get something that we're doing in front of their eyes more often? I make YouTube content, so it's like, well, you should wear a shirt that says "Space for Rent." And so I
Right.
wore that. You know, I think I got them in maybe August or September, and I've been wearing them a couple times, and already have generated like 2 or 3 new leads on people that are like, oh wait, I could advertise on his shirt right there. That's great. He gets an X amount of views. Let me pay him for that. So as far as you know, building that brand and creating those connections, it's great. She does a great job with that stuff.
I love that. And shout out to Morgan, by the way. She set this up, scheduled and everything. So big
She's
shout
a
out.
rock star. Yeah.
Um, so I did want to ask, what are you most excited about now on the business front? Are you
Hmm.
focused on like DTC products, your own brand, investing in new companies? How do all those things weigh out in your head, and how do you kind of try to intertwine them all?
Yeah, so I'm excited about all of those. They're all puzzle pieces. You know, I see this as like the big picture, and you have to place one piece and figure out there's a whole bunch of other ones. Like, okay, which one goes next, and which one connects with this? So that's kind of the analogy that I use for it. What I'm most excited about right now is understanding motivation in people. How do you motivate an individual? How do you motivate a group? How do you get the right people to fit the culture to continue to motivate the group? And so a lot of my research, I'm a huge researcher. I learn. That's like my main passion is just learning new things.
I love that.
So my main research right now is in team building and strategy and how to, you know, how to motivate people and how to keep the culture and stuff like that. But it applies to baseball and business. So I feel like it's a great lane to be in because I'm going to be a leader in the clubhouse, hopefully, and I'm going to be a leader in my businesses. So that's my main passion right now. As far as how everything integrates, the way I see it, like my strong suits are being the public face, being out there and talking about what the future will look like and what I see and you know a better landscape for players and a better landscape for fans and how we connect them and stuff like that. So that a lot of that is building my brand so I have a wider reach, a wider audience, a bigger platform. So I'm excited about that. You know, creating content and the vlog and stuff like that. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. I have a couple other things coming out, probably getting announced around spring training entities that I'm building that will help kind of double down on some of the media push that we've had. Like I mentioned earlier, you have the media first, then you have to be able to utilize that in a branding way, and then you know draws people into the ecosystem. So excited about some of the opportunities that we have for fans centered around that, and also some of the impacts that we'll be able to make on the player side with individuals and help kind of educate them so that they can reap some of the benefits of you know expanding their platform and maximizing their time. But yeah, that's kind of how I see the overall structure. I'm out front. I'm the point person on building the brand and bringing recognition to the companies. And then you get the team of people at the companies to be able to over deliver on the product side, to the player, to the fan, to whoever. And then the strategy of coming up with the new products is fun. Like, well, what creative thing can we do here? And, what do people look for, and how do we structure that? And, that stuff's interesting to me too.
Totally. So to follow up on what you said about researching how to be a leader and putting, time and energy into trying to do that the best you can. What have you found in terms of motivating people to do, the things that either you want them to do or you want them to do?
Yeah, so it starts, like, again, the way I make sense of this all in my head, and there's certainly many ways to do it, is where are we right now and where do we want to go? And then you have to fill in how, right? So I have actually a form that I ask every one of my employees to fill out. It's a personal goal sheet, because at the end of the day, people are motivated by what they're motivated by. It's very hard to change someone's motivators. Some
Mhm.
people are motivated by money, some people by success, some people by friendship and relationships. It's different for everybody. So I ask them to fill it out. It's like, where are you now? Give an accurate evaluation of like where you feel like your life is. Are you happy? Or are you not? How are your relationships? Are they good? Are they not? Are you content? Whatever the case is. Where are we now? Then it's like, in 5 years, where would you like to be personally, professionally, financially? In 10 years, same thing. So now you have a little bit of like some checkpoints along the way, right? And then I can look at that and say, okay, as a business owner, as an employer, like, how do I structure the job titles? How do I structure the job responsibilities? How do I structure the conversations that we're going to have, the monthly meetings? How do I structure these things to align with this person's goals? So it helps put the person in the right track in the company, so long as obviously their skill set fits with that. But it gives me a much clearer picture of like, okay, well, there's two people that could do this job, and this person really wants to, and this person is like kind of in on it but wants to go this direction. Okay, great. Now I can separate people in those areas, and then they're going to be motivated by it because they look at it and they say, oh, okay, I'm going in the direction I want to go, first off, and then this is in line with my goals, so I feel like I'm moving forward. I feel empowered. I feel like I have ownership of my personal life, my career, as well as like this new lane that I'm going in. And then when you talk to them about things, you have to structure it and like, how do you give them what they want first? Because when you think about people, if I come to you and I say, hey, I got this great idea, you're going to do all these things to help me. What do you say? It's like, you're like, why would I do that? What's in it for me? It's everyone's
Right.
response. If I go to you and I say, hey, I have this great idea, I have like this way, this way, this way, and that way to help you, I think it'd be great. What do you say? You're like, well, what's the catch? Yeah, I'm in on that, but what's the catch, right? And it's two different responses. So if I go with the second way, you're a lot more motivated to do the things that I'm laying out. And in the background, I may have some like long-term goal for that. Like, if it's a relationship building thing with a partner in business, like, hey, how can I help your business? Okay, I provide value to you. I go to you again and say, how'd that work? How can we do better next time? You know, let's provide more value to you. And 6 months down the road, a year down the road, they may come back and say, you've done a lot for me. Like, how can I help your business? Oh, really not a whole lot. Like, just connections. Like, we just don't know a whole lot of people. We're trying to make connections. Oh, I have 40 people that I know in this specific industry. Like, you want me to make some introductions for you? That's easy. I'll put you on a text thread. Yes, great. Now that develops into business opportunities down the road, employee
Confidence.
opportunities down the road, stuff
Mhm.
like that. So it all starts with motivating people, as far as I understand and as far as my experience tells me. It all starts with, how do you give them what they want first, get them on your side. That creates the partnership, and my goals in it are more long term and looking at the future and the development of it, as opposed to right now, like, hey man, can I come on your podcast, Joe Rogan, so I can get followers? It's like, well, do I have something that's intriguing that adds to Joe's audience? Like, two
Right.
different ways of approaching it.
No, that's definitely 100% true. And also when you can, giving people on your team and things of that nature appreciable assets,
No doubt.
that they're able to, actually be compensated based on, their performance and, put forwards in that regard. That's something that I've been thinking about, a lot recently. I heard Mark Cuban, being asked how to how to, bring the gap closer together between the top, 5, 10% and, the bottom 90. And the answer is for employers to give their employees as many appreciable assets. And I feel like that only
Right.
incentivizes those people, underneath to work harder. So I'm definitely with you in terms of value. And it's something that I think about a lot too. When anybody reaches out to you, right? The ones that you'll respond to are the ones where, it's not about the person. It's about you. And it should always be about you. And anything that isn't about you is ridiculous. But, if you're reaching out to somebody else, it's never about you. It's about
Hmm.
them. It's,
Right.
hey, what can I do? What can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I better your business, provide value to you, work for you for free, do these things that other people
Mm,
can't do? And then, that's a very easy in the door.
no
Um,
doubt.
but I think where people oftentimes, I either don't know, and everybody makes this mistake of being, I definitely made this mistake, when reaching out to certain people, when I was younger, I would, there should never be a me, in the text line or in the thing, unless there's a ton of value following it. It should all be, you instead of I.
You lead with you, right? And then you use the I as like supporting evidence as to why they should work with you. It's like, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. I think you're extremely interesting. I'd love to talk about these things. My podcast gets 1 million downloads per episode.
Right.
I'm in this niche. I think it could benefit your brand and your visibility. Would that be something you're interested in? So you kind of sandwiches as evidence as to
Right.
why they should join you, but you start and you finish with the benefit to them.
100%. That's the Krabby Patty secret formula right there. Yeah. No,
Krabby Patties.
I like that.
What an iconic patty.
Iconic. Um, do you have any like daily practices? I know you love doing research. Obviously you're training
Yeah.
very frequently. You're doing vlogs, you're doing media, you're doing business. Do you meditate every day? Do you write in a journal? Is there anything like that? Cold shower? What do you do on a daily basis that you got to do?
Yeah. So every morning I have like an hour and a half routine. Sometimes it's just too much, and I'm going to take a day off and just be a normal human and not do all this crazy stuff. But
Right.
I measure my blood every morning. I measure my heart rate variability. I measure my central nervous system readiness with there's like a tap test on your phone where you tap your screen as many times as you can in 10 seconds. I have this huge spreadsheet of data going back like 3-4 years of like 50 daily metrics. I'm tracking. I hold my breath as long as I can every morning and measure that. That's another indication of central nervous system readiness. I measure my hydration. I measure. I track all my meals. I track. So this is all stuff like that I do for the training side of things. But it's also revealed a lot of things about myself that can help me in other areas of my life. Like I realized when I started tracking my sleep 2 or 3 years ago, every day I'd look at my REM sleep, my deep sleep, my HRV, stuff like that. And I noticed that I was losing like 2 hours of sleep every night because I was tossing and turning. And so I've been chasing this like restlessness, uh, trying to figure out how to be less restless. Well, that helps cognitive ability. The more sleep you get, the more sharp you are during the day, the easier decisions are to make. So that helps business, it helps training, it helps relationships, it helps everything. So these are all things that I do. And then I have 4 days a week, I'm doing cardio on a specific like breathing regimen before I do anything in the day. So it gets me primed and going. I have an inversion table that I hang on and do some breathing exercises to promote blood flow and help my physical readiness. Um, all sorts of different stuff. I don't have any I always wake up at 4:30 a.m. and take a cold shower type of things because my life is so different. I'm in this city, I'm in that city. Sometimes I have to change because we have a day game and I can't get through all that different stuff because I need sleep and that's most important. So I try not to have any. I don't want to say that they're crutches, but for lack of a better term, like crutch that I have to do this every single day because I can't throughout the year. I like to be adaptable, but yeah, I have a ton of stuff that I do on a daily basis, that helps me track where my body's at, where my mind's at, and optimize to try to keep those two things in the best place possible.
That's super interesting. Have you ever tried meditating or spent any time doing that?
I've spent a good amount of time meditating in the early 20 teens. I used to have, so my mind runs nonstop,
Like,
right? Like
yeah,
I'm
what a
thinking and like
thing.
there's,
Yeah.
yeah. So I couldn't fall asleep. I would lay in bed and my mind would be going everywhere. I'd have this idea and that, and I was thinking about, I was reading, and then I'd get up and I'd look at my phone because I'd want to know this, and I'd have this thirst for information. Instead of just, writing it down or creating a voice note, I'd spend an hour researching it right then, and then I'm thinking about all the information, or like I'll listen to a podcast or an audiobook as I'm going to sleep, but then it sparks my mind like going in a bunch of different directions, and how do I, connect all these things. So I taught myself how to fall asleep. I taught myself to how to shut my brain off, and a lot of that was through meditation. So I created this routine that, I don't have to use it anymore because I've trained my body. But the routine was basically, I would breathe in for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds. While I was doing it, I had to draw the number, like the count. So I'd draw a 1 in my head, a 2 in my head, a 3 in my head as I was counting my breath holds. And so that would, because I had to focus on like seeing the number draw itself, it would help bring my mind into like one thing as opposed to all of this other stuff. Once I did 5 cycles like that, I would imagine myself sitting in a theater with everything that's going on in my brain on the stage. It's a play that's going on, dim lights, like there's a crowd of people there. I'm watching everything that's unfolding in my head play out on this stage. And eventually the curtains would start to close, and they'd close slowly, and I'd give all the thoughts in my head time to play out and to have their time, and I'd watch it, and I'd, just think about it. And as soon as the curtain closed, I thought of a black hole sucking everything into just blackness. Very
Super.
rarely, yeah, very rarely did I get to the black hole side of things, because when I accepted that I was going to give these thoughts their time to play out and just like be okay with it, my body relaxed and I fell asleep.
Hmm.
But that was my routine, and I did that probably for 6 months or a year, every single night, to shut my brain off. um, I've done visualization of, pitches and performance and stuff like that. I did a lot of that back in 2013, 2014. I was going through some mechanical changes at the time, and read some research on how visualization and meditation can actually increase learning rates, and the I'm forgetting the term, but the pathways. And there's a medical term for how the body creates like skill, solidifies skill, and stuff like that. I forget what the term for it is. Um, but how meditation can actually increase that and help that, so you don't have to do the physical reps. So I've been like, I went hardcore for like 2 to 3 years on it, and then I felt like I had learned and the things that I needed to, and the lessons from it. And I'm very good at relaxing myself. Like I can at any point in the day, I can just like fully relax my body and like relax my mind, because I've taught myself how to do that. So I don't need to do it as much anymore. So it's not currently a part of my daily routine, but some of the principles are ingrained in me now.
Yeah, I think calmness is such an underrated superpower, you know,
Huge.
because you don't like if especially in meditating, if you get all those thoughts out of the way, like whatever thoughts about anything negative ever, that's gone after you meditate. So
Hmm.
you're left with yourself. And if you're lucky enough to be able to do what you love or even chase what you love and your passion, shoot, the rest is all
Yeah.
just there to have fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting. That's super cool though that you measure everything in the morning. I've
I'm such a
never,
nerd.
man, I don't do any of that. I pay attention to like my heart rate while I'm working out and things like that. And I have my Apple Watch that I have to get 1,000 calories burned every day. Like
Yep.
I don't take a day off from doing that, and that takes a bit of time. It takes like 2 to 3 hours every day,
Yep.
but I've never measured my sleep or anything like that. Would you recommend that to the normal person?
So a lot of the research that, and again, one of the entities that I'm going to launch publicly coming up that we haven't talked about, but one of the things we're looking at is sleep in high performers and how it can affect the cognitive skill, like the cognitive skills. Um, Velocity in pitchers is a good example. it's pretty much a physical skill. You can be really tired, you can be like worn down or whatever, and your body can still produce very similar velocities. But the command of that, throwing it where you want it, is highly dependent on sleep. If you get poor sleep for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, like your ability to command the ball and to be sharp and uh, throw the ball, where you want to, that's more of a fine-tuned motor skill, and that's heavily influenced by sleep. Same thing with cognitive ability in other areas. If I get poor sleep and I'm trying to write uh, a system, a process doc for one of my companies, like it takes me a long time to get through it. I'm foggy. I miss things. It's not clear. I read it the next day after getting good sleep, and I'm like, wow, I have to redo a lot of this. Wasted time, right? So from an efficiency standpoint, I do think everyone should measure and know something about it. The problem is you're asking people now to be research assistants because there's not one, or researchers, because there's not one space where they can go and just be educated about all of this stuff
Right.
for their specific application. And that's something that we would like to be able to do, is take the data that we get on high performers, the elite of the elite, the professional athletes in that space, and show the cognitive differences, and then education for the athletes, for the youth, for people in business, for people in whatever the case is. Like, hey, here's how you do it. Here's what you look at. Here's all the insights that like help you, and here's the proof that we've seen in high performers. So that's kind of one of the lanes that entity will go down. But I do think that people should know more about their bodies, because it just, if your body functions well and your mind functions well and you treat it right, you're going to be a lot more productive and a lot happier doing the things that you're doing on a daily basis.
And I want to jump back to brand in a second, but how heavily do you think diet impacts physical performance and mental clarity?
Quite a bit. I actually so I took it off last night. I probably still have a ring you can see on my arm there.
Yeah.
So I was wearing a levels continuous glucose monitor device. And I've been having this problem where when I work out really hard, when I try really hard, my body just shuts down. I tank really, it's like a cliff. I can try really hard, bam, I'm done. And I like start trembling, and I start like, it's, I can't move. I can move, but I'm like very weak and lightheaded for like 20, 30 minutes. And it's just this cliff that I fall off. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I started wearing a continuous glucose monitor. And what I was able to see is, like, when I eat certain meals that I think are healthy, like for instance, I would have a chicken breast with white rice and broccoli for dinner. And I'm like, that's a healthy meal, right? Well, what I was noticing is that like my glucose afterwards spike really high. I'm like, now what the heck is going on? How is it, like, I didn't eat any sugar? Well, it's like the carbs in the white rice, my body reacted to those in a certain way. So if I added in some fats, like I added in some avocado to the some fats and fibers to that meal, now I didn't spike as much. When I don't have as many spikes, I don't tank during my workouts. And also, glucose spikes are linked to like risk of diabetes in the future, and stuff like that. So that makes my body, understanding that information and my diet and what my body responds to best, helps my mental clarity. It helps because I don't feel that sluggishness and the kind of like drowsiness after I eat a meal, because I'm not getting these wild like fluctuations. So yeah, diet has a huge impact, but we can't really measure. I mean, in real time yet. We're very early on in the game of being able to measure how that stuff is affecting each individual, because it's not the same. Our bodies are so different.
Man, I think it's all going to change super soon, like you're saying. And I all I can say is I would not want to be a fast food company right now. That's
it's
all I can
it's
say.
it's bad. I ran some tests where I went and got a fast food, and it's like it's ridiculous. It is not good.
I can feel it. I don't need any
Yeah,
tests. I feel it, bro. I'm out like a light.
yeah.
I'm an
Yeah.
honor. I want to touch back on branding, but I also wanted to touch, you're a free agent. Um,
Yes.
are you serious? I saw you post on Instagram. You said or something along the lines of comment why I should go to your team. Are you actually taking comments into consideration for your free agency decision?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things for me is connecting with fan bases. So if the fan base is excited, that's a big thing. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy playing baseball, and one of the things I enjoy most is connecting with fans and the interaction there. The comments I get on the vlog, the requests I get on social media, seeing fans out of the stadium. That was one of the worst things about coronavirus is there was no fans to interact with in the stadium, no autographs to sign, no people to talk to. Um, so yeah, and fans know their team, they know their city, they know like some of the cool stuff about it that like you don't hear in a pitch from a front office. It's like, hey, here's our coaches, here's our information, here's the contract size and the money and whatever. But like you don't know the pulse of the fan base. You don't know what makes a Yankee fan and what makes them different than a Mets fan. These fan bases have identities, and the players need to fit that identity of the fan base. Otherwise, there'll be a disconnect there. If a fan base is super blue collar and hardworking, and you bring in someone that's flaunting, money and riches and whatever the case is, there's going to be a disconnect there. And I want to connect with the fans. So I want to understand these things about the fan base in the city before I, make a decision. It's not the only decision, but it's one of them.
So off of that, what fan base do you think you align with?
I see where you're going with that. I like that. That's a creative way to get to it. There's a lot of them. One, the biggest thing is like baseball fans. So like St. Louis has tremendous baseball fans. Cincinnati has tremendous baseball fans. There's other cities that aren't baseball cities. But like Boston fan base is so passionate about their sports. You look at like every time you play in Fenway, like it's packed, and the traditions surrounding just baseball there. I mean, the Cubs before they were, before this kind of current group of players, like back in 2014 or whatever, like they weren't that good, but there's 40,000 people there at noon on a Wednesday, and the Cubs fan base is different than the White Sox fan base. The White Sox fans, like the stadium, they'll be good, and the stadium will be relatively empty. They'll draw 5,000 people. So it's like, what do you have to do as a player to identify with that fan base if they're not going to be out of the stadium versus the Cubs? Like they're all out of the stadium. So yeah, those are some of the things that I look for. I think the Mets fans are making a huge push on social media. They're excited right now and excited for baseball. That's one of the biggest things that I look for. So Angels fans have been the same way. They're like all in my mentions with photoshops and stuff like that. I've noticed them quite a bit too. So those are the two so far that kind of stand out to me.
That's awesome. So you said you want to be a billionaire. Does that tie in with wanting to own a team one day?
At some point, I think I probably will, but I don't know if I'll own a team in baseball or if I'll own a team in another sport. I think, yeah. So I think that like I have a lot of ideas on how to change the structure of an organization to be more in line with where I see the future of sports going. And I don't know if I'd be able to do that in baseball because
So let me
it's so ingrained.
give you a scenario. I'm a huge New York Knicks fan. You
Yeah.
just bought the New York Knicks. What are you doing to change the organization?
I'm investing in the health and development of my players first and foremost, and I don't want to say that they don't. I don't know what the Knicks do. I don't know anything about the internal operation. But I'm investing in the development and health and development of my players, high performance stuff like that. But from a biomechanics standpoint, from like a physiology standpoint, stuff like that, because I want my best players to be my best players every single night, stay healthy, be on the court, right? Then I'm investing in the fans and connecting the fans, bringing the fans back into the fold, giving them ownership of the team in some way, whether it's from making decisions on playlists that are played during the game, whether it's having them in certain meetings of the team live stream to the fans where they can have input on certain things, jersey decisions, like stuff, giving them some piece of ownership where they feel like they're like, I'm part of this organization because I want that, right? I want the fan base. I know the baseball industry a lot better. So like in the baseball industry, there's like 6 levels of minor leagues right now. We don't need that many per se. There's certain reasons why we do, and like to help spread the game in smaller communities and stuff like that. But from a strictly player development standpoint, like there should be a research and development group, where like you have players there to test new cutting edge things that you're not ready to roll out to your big league guys yet, but like you can do a ton of development and find new things that work. That's not done right now. I would have players be full-time employees. So it's like, you're gonna train at our facility in the off season. But we're gonna, and this works in the minor leagues, not as much in the big league level, but we're gonna pay you as a full-time employee. We're gonna pay you a wage where you can live, but your job is to get better at baseball. And this is how you're gonna do it. And you're gonna be in our system, in our facility and stuff like that. Um, there's so many things that I'd have to look at the structure of the organization, right? But like, it's player health and safety and consistency. It's drawing the fan base in, and it's optimizing the organization structure itself so that you have the best people getting the best results.
You sound like you'd be a great owner. So I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to the day. Do you think there's ever been a better time in history to be famous? And I preface that. I preface that meaning particularly in business, because you see all the biggest exits right now, or the biggest brands that are being built, especially in like the liquor space, for example, with George Clooney, exiting his company for 400 million. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson sold 400,000 cases of his, liquor company. LeBron launching his. But you see a lot of these big brands that are being built quickly now, quickly meaning 1 to 5 to maybe 10 years, being built on the backs of celebrity. So do you think there's ever been a better time to be famous?
Probably not. I think it's easier to be famous now than it ever has been, because of how many people you can get in front of, how easily. I can reach a worldwide, I can interact with people in Japan and have a presence in Japan and live in the United States because people see my stuff. But before, it was very hard to do that, So the Jordan brand was built slowly, over the course of his entire career. And it really took off kind of after his career, right? Like in a huge way, where you've seen like LeBron's brand, Curry's brand, those people you mentioned, it's been built in like, 5 years or 10 years, like while they're playing. It's so much easier. You don't have to go and do a 2-month tour in China to get in front of people. Like, you bring them in social media and then you already have a presence. So it's easier now to become famous, and then the opportunities for the same reason to build a brand and get that brand in front of a wide audience, a worldwide audience. It's never been easier. So from that standpoint, yeah, I think it's one of the best times. From the standpoint, the negatives to it is like, you mess up and your brand can tank instantly because you say one thing and you get caught on camera. You do one thing out in public and someone has a camera there, it's everywhere in an instant. So damage control is super important, and operating authentically. So what you build your brand around, it needs to be who you are as a person, so that you don't have to be on every single second of every single day trying to like live this fake presence, just who you are, and you don't get caught in those situations. So positives and negatives to this time for famous people for sure. But
Totally. And I think authenticity has never been more important either, because it's impossible to be somebody that you're not publicly. It's just bound to end up in disaster. And also,
I think it's important right now. I think it's never been more important because it's never been more rare. It's so easy to be fake. You can post something on Instagram, you can post something on Twitter and put on any persona that you want. And you don't have to meet people, but you have this massive friend network, virtual. And authenticity is fading quickly, in my opinion.
I agree. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. But that's also why I believe, like, on like the influencer side, most influencers are not authentic, for whatever reason. That's why I personally believe an influencer's career on average is shorter than the average NFL career.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that? 2.5 years?
Like 3 years. Yeah.
3 years. Yeah. Yeah. I can see it. They're kind of flash in the pans, and they make a big impact right away. You see with musical stars and stuff like that. But yeah, I like that perspective.
So question, do you own any of your own baseball cards?
I do not.
Do you know what people have paid for them in the past?
I do.
So what do you think the most somebody's ever paid for a Trevor Bauer card is?
Oh, the most? I know I've seen some of them that aren't one of ones and aren't special, like chromes and stuff like that, going for like 800, 1,000. So I got to imagine it's over. I don't know the exact price. I would
Yeah.
guess over 1,000 though.
So if If your rookie card auto numbered to 500 went for 1500 on eBay, that means that the overall market of that individual card is worth, if you had every single one, it'd be 600K in cards right there. Pretty
Hmm.
insane when you think about it, but maybe something to invest in.
It might be. I think owning your own intellectual property in that way is extremely important. Um, I haven't dove into the card industry. I know it's a huge industry, obviously. It's one I haven't explored yet. But I I appreciate you laying it out like that because you have my interest peaked now. I'm gonna look into that stuff.
I want to make a couple more points on this. One, we're going to send you one of your own cards because you have to own one, and I'm not taking no as an answer. Two, the best way that I can explain the card industry really quick is that the second a player is drafted, the second you were drafted, that was your IPO. And your autograph was worth X dollars. And then depending on your performance over time, just like
You
a
you
stock.
sold me. You sold me already. Yeah.
So let me give an example. This guy named Vegas Dave bought a Mike Trout one of one superfractor in 2014 for $400,000. He flipped it for 4 million this year.
Yep.
I personally bought a Giannis Antetokounmpo Prism rookie card for $1 in 2013 when he was drafted, and I sold it for over 1,000. Like
What a return.
these things happen, and that was a spike because the industry went crazy and Corona had everybody at home. So the beginning of this year, combined with the Last Dance, really sent everything going crazy,
Hmm.
and people started realizing how not just how volatile it is, but how exciting it is because you could buy a Luka Doncic PSA 10. It's the grading company. It's graded on a 1 to 10 scale
Right.
rookie card for $70. And beyond just the natural organic spike of how things happen, depending on his play, it would go up 10, 20, $30 per day.
Isn't there a company that's someone from was it the Knicks that's launching a company that basically treats players like stocks? Not the Knicks, the Nets, I think.
So Spencer
Some,
Dinwiddie,
yes. Yeah.
yeah. So Spencer's a friend. He's doing something interesting. It's different though. But eBay is the main marketplace for sports cards. Then you have StockX, who has a sports card department, a company called Star Stock. There are a bunch of different people doing a bunch of different things, but the game is in owning the cards yourself as physical items, investing in players that you believe in, and investing in old cards, and getting in as early as you can on players that you believe in.
Interesting. Putting it in like yeah, you sold me when you put it as like an IPO and in a stocks perspective because I know that world, so I immediately understand.
That's it. And you can buy as many shares as you want because each
Yeah.
card is a share in its
Yeah.
own individual intersection if you're buying the right cards. There are a lot of
It's a way of betting on yourself, like
if you're the
own
guy on
your
the card, yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
cannot buy my own cards, but you can.
That's a
Um,
good point. I appreciate that.
no, of course. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much everything. I wanted to, you know, also say you're on every social platform. You're on Instagram, you're on Twitter, you're on YouTube. Trevor Bauer on all of them.
At Bauer Outage.
At Bauer.
So Instagram and Twitter is at Bauer Outage. YouTube is just my name, Trevor Bauer.
Well, I'm looking forward to everything you're about to do. I know we're gonna keep in touch along the way because I want to be of help however I can. I appreciate you a ton for doing this and gonna get you into sports cards. And,
It's been a pleasure talking. I really appreciate you having me on. Had a blast, and we'll have to, like as you said, keep in contact because I think you have a ton of information that that I'd like to learn more about.
hell yeah, man! I'm here anytime. Always here. All right, everybody, follow Trevor. We'll see you next time. Peace. Awesome.